posters were nailed to the old crack light poles. Never before seen in this town. Come get your future told by Annabelle for only $10. Well, this is new, I mumbled to myself while getting in my car to drive home from work. Let me tell you, office jobs are more tiring than they look. I get home around 9 p.m. and decided to eat something before checking our local Facebook group. It only took 2 posts before I found the one talking about Annabelle. But strangely enough, still no details about the gig or this mysterious Annabelle, who seemingly appeared out of thin air. Since I was a sucker for this kind of stuff, I decided to check it out the next day. Next morning, I woke up at 11. It was the weekend and I had it free to myself, away from work. I did my usual routine and got dressed to go see Annabelle. The poster didn't mention times or location, but I figured I'd see it since most fortune tellers do this in tents for some reason. And it took me half an hour, just looking around before I saw it. A black tent, pinned to the ground with strings tied around metal poles. It gave me that eerie feeling that made my hair stand straight up like a commander yelled at me, like it didn't belong here. The first thing was the color of the tent. Most of them are red with white stripes, but this one was swallowing the light, like something out of a movie. Also the size of it. Usually tents like this are big and have colorful signs urging you to come in. But this one was small, with an opening front and center. This, combined with the eerie feeling, should have given me the answer. Turn back, don't go in. But I did the opposite. It attracted my attention more. There was no line to wait after, so I headed right in. Inside was like the outside. Dark. The only light came from the vanilla scented candles whose smell spread throughout the tent, coming into my nostrils, calming me in a weird way. The candle was neatly placed on a small round table that was covered with a white piece of cloth. Besides the table were 2 small round chairs, one facing me and one facing away. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I asked, seeing no one. "Yes. Dear, sit down. I'll be out in a moment." The voice sounded like it belonged to a girl in her 20s, and it had a soothing and warm tone to it. The voice made me jump a little, and I looked for its source. Finding nothing, I sat down, preparing the money I required for her to tell my fortune. She came over to the table surprisingly fast. She had a black cloak, so I couldn't see more than a void looking at me. "I've been expecting you, Mr. Ray," she said in her calm and controlled voice. How do you know my name?" I asked, trying to keep my composure, but the thought of something being seriously wrong spread through my brain like a tumor. "You saw the posters outside. I am a fortune teller. I can see the future. Now, tell me, what about your future do you desire to know?" Well, halfway through the sentence, my words stopped coming out, like something sewed my lips shut tight. I thought for a second, and decided to do what everyone does. "Well, I want to know about my death. In detail." "How disappointing," she said, still in a calm voice. "I was expecting something greater from you. But if that is what you wish, that is what you shall get. Oh, and don't worry about the payment. This one is on the house." I was expecting her to pull out a classic crystal globe, mumble some chant, and tell me something like, "You will become a successful businessman," or "You will have a happy family with 2 children." But what happened next shook me to the core. "Give me your hands, Mr. Ray." "My hands? For what? Don't you have a crystal globe or something like that?" "Mr. Ray, please give me your hands." Her voice was as calm as ever. I wanted to protest, find an excuse, but I couldn't come up with anything, so I just said, "Fine, here." "Now close your eyes with me," she said while holding my hands. Her hands were warm, almost telling you to grab them and never let go. Her skin was as smooth as velvet. The feeling of grabbing her hands was the same when Grandma used to make pies on Christmas. I If you say so. At this point, I just gave in. What's the worst that could happen? We held hands for a few seconds, but I started to get lost in my head. There were many gross things, each with its own label. Stress was a small, contorted creature with a few strands of hair on its head. The eyes were tiny bloodshot marbles, like they had to watch a shitty movie 100 times. There were other ones, like smoking or anxiety. And at the end of all these was something strange. A light. The type of light that you see at the end of a tunnel. Small, yet full of hope. I must have stared at it for longer than I want to admit. Mr. Ray, do not open your eyes, but go towards the light until you reach it. When you reach it, touch it without fear. The words coming from Annabelle made me almost jump out of my chair, since I wasn't expecting them at the time. Her voice was still warm and soothing, but they didn't come from the outside. They now came from somewhere in my head, echoing down the creature's hallway. I didn't try to question how this was even possible. I followed the light. Along the way were many more gross and disfigured creatures, all of them telling me to come closer and look at them. But the echoing voice continued to tell me not to go off trail. At some point, they got so disgusting that they made every inch of my skin crawl, every bone in me shake. And finally, I reached the light. It was mesmerizing, to say the least. The glob of light was floating, seemingly resting on nothing above the ground. The light inside was so bright that it could blind every normal person. But for some reason, I was fine. It also was so full of hope and life somehow. It was very hot. I could feel it touching my face with small little burns dancing on my skin. The light, Mr. Ray, represents the hope in you. And it's hot because that is desire. If you touch it, it won't burn you. Trust me. The soothing, echoing voice came again. That distracted me from looking at it, and I began to have second thoughts. What happens if I touch it? What if I die? But the voice told me everything was going to be fine, and for some odd reason, I trusted this lady with every ounce of my life I had. Like I knew her for years, and we were good friends. Plus, I'm too deep in this already. No going back. So I finally touched it. After I touched it, everything became bright, like a nuclear bomb dropped in my head. When I came to, I was standing in front of my apartment complex with this lady beside me. She spoke. Now, Mr. Ray, we are on the day that you die. I thought this was the most detail that I can give you. You will see everything that happens today. We, on the other hand, can't be seen, heard, or touched. We are like spirits. She finished the sentence with a chuckle. What? How is this even possible? Time travel doesn't exist. This can't be real. Mr. Ray, tell me this. What is real when everything seems like an illusion, and everyone seems fake, almost programmed? For some reason, what she said just felt like a punch in the gut. Was I dreaming? Did she drug me? What the hell is happening? All these questions remain unanswered since I didn't say a word. Thought so. Now, shall we? Said Annabelle in a low, calm, and concentrated voice. We only have about 20 minutes to see everything before we go back to the reality that we know. Alright, fine. Let's go, I said. My voice was now trembling. I took another glance at her. She still had the same cloak on, and I couldn't see her face. I again wondered why, but I didn't dare to ask her. As I was gazing at her, lost in the void beneath the cloak, look, over there. I looked and I saw me. It was me, getting into the car early in the morning. I had the same white formal shirt, the same black fabric pants, held with a black belt, and the same blue tie with white stripes. This was the outfit I went to work with. I got in the car and started driving. I drove through the same woods I always drive in to get back and forth from work. The drive is about an hour long, The trees of the forest form a natural archway all the way above the road. The trees are thick and green. Their bark, seemingly never touched by anything, seems so weird. No bumps in it, no insects, nothing. The sun was barely getting to touch the dry concrete road because the leaves block it from doing so. Birds were chirping happily, but there was no trace of them. Nowhere to be seen, yet their chirps were so full of life and joy. The driveway was somehow sped up, and Annabelle and I were keeping up with it. We were flying after it. Yeah, somehow we could fly. I didn't try to question this either, because I actually liked flying. The rest of the day went as normal, until I had to go home. When I left for work, I found out our boss laid off some coworkers because the company wasn't doing as good as it was before, and I didn't have enough money to pay everybody. And I was next. At least, this is what Annabelle told me. I looked angry and distressed, so I guess it checked out. Sour tears of sadness almost forming in my eyes. I threw the suitcase in my car, slammed the door, and started driving. I was flying along the road. I never speed, so this was very unusual. I was also flying after myself to see what happens. Annabelle was still with me when it happened. A tree had fallen on the road, but I didn't have time to react and I slammed my car into it. The black sedan was now half the length that it used to be. It caught fire. The smell of burning oil was spreading through the air like smoke from a factory. Even myself, the current self, could barely support it. The car was completely smashed. Little parts and bolts were everywhere on the road and in the woods. I got thrown out of the window before it caught fire, but that isn't what killed me. What happened next is like something out of a horror movie. The tree was not fallen from natural causes. It looked like the tall wood tower was perfectly cut and placed there by somebody. Or something. As my body was slowly getting back up to grab my broken phone from the concrete, something came out of the woods. At first, my body heard leaves shuffle around. It asked, "Who's there?" But got no response. A few seconds went by. It pounced. A tall creature, gaunt to the maximum, with a desiccated skin pulled tightly over the bones. The bones were pushing out against the rash gray skin, like they wanted to escape. Its eyes were deeply pulled back into their sockets. Its lips were tattered and bloody. The creature emanated an odor of decay, death, and corruption. When I saw this creature, my stomach started to turn like a washing machine at triple speed. My skin was itching like 100 bugs were on me. I wanted to look away so badly, but I couldn't for some reason. At one point, I began to think about scooping out my eyes just to never see this again. The odor was already bad enough, but combined with the burning oil, it made for one hell of a smell. As I said, the creature pounced and started ripping me to shreds. Body parts were flying everywhere. My organs were being pulled from my body with brute force and devoured by this hungry creature. The worst part was hearing myself scream for help but getting no answer. The sound of bones being cracked to bits and flesh ripping from them. The screams became more and more muffled as this went longer. The creature stopped when only my shoes were left on the road, along with a pool of blood. The puddle of blood was huge, like nothing I've ever seen before. After I saw this, I started yelling for it to stop. I couldn't take it any longer. I wanted to die, to make everything just stop. My brain was traumatized. I was traumatized. I needed to get out of here. Annabelle just watched, motionless, emotionless. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I yelled at her. "What do you mean? You wanted to know how you die in detail. This is how you will go," she said, still in that warm and monotone voice. "Jesus fucking Christ, lady. You have serious problems," I said, still yelling. "The only one that has problems is you, Mr. Ray. You wanted this. I gave you what you wanted. It's not my fault you can't take it." I was speechless. I didn't know what to do or say, so I just said, "Can we get out of here, please?" "As you wish, Mr. Ray." After she said this, everything turned bright again. I opened my eyes and let go of her hands. We were back at the tent. As I got up to leave, reality came crumbling down on me. She said, "Come again soon." With a chuckle. Like hell I will, I thought to myself. When I got back home, it was already late. I was so tired I went directly to sleep, and I slept for most of Sunday too. My brain surely needed it. That was 1 week ago. Today, 2 coworkers got laid off, since the company doesn't have the money to pay them.